Hey, I'm Milo Ventimiglia, and you're watching In Studio with The Hollywood Reporter.
Thank you so much for dropping by.
Happy to be here, man.
Seriously, thanks for being here.
Yeah, you got it, bro.
Now, Jack is praised so much as this hero, this beloved figure. How do you handle that pressure and living up to this guy?
Jack he's a hard man to live up to for myself, for husbands around the world, for fathers around the world. I get a lot of bereavement from people being like, man, you're ruining my marriage because everybody sees Jack and they're trying to I gotta be Jack. And I'm like, no man, just be yourself because you're real.
Yeah.
You're a real human being. You can really truly impact your wife, your family, your community, whatever you choose to put your positivity towards, you can actually make an impact out of it.
That's a great way to put it.
I know it sounds like a very Jack thing to say, right?
No, yeah, but no, it was a Milo thing to say.
Very much so.
This past season, we see kind of more of what really shaped his character and him as a father with his time in Vietnam. And you said that Jack doesn't really see the war as heroic. Can you kind of talk about that and explain that?
I mean, war is a pretty horrible thing. And, Jack's purpose of being in Vietnam was to find Nicky, was to find his brother. So beyond that, he became responsible for this team of guys that were under his command where he lost one of them. And, heroism isn't something that Jack strives for. He's a man that jumps into action. But, heroics, he's not in a war to be heroic, and war it's a terrible, terrible thing.
Now, you said yourself you almost entered the Navy at 18 and your dad served 2 tours in Vietnam. Looking back, what do you remember most about what your dad would say about the war or not say, and how did he translate that to Jack's story?
I'd heard stories of my father's, just talking to me as a son about his early 20s and his time in Vietnam and in the service. Friends that have been in wars and whatnot, I've heard from them. But for me, it's like I have the good fortune of having a roadmap. I know where it's going to go because we have scripts.
Yeah.
So if anything, what I try to do in the conversations with my father, with my friends, is to just understand the emotional impact of war and what that really does to a person and what they bring home from that experience. Because a lot of guys and these days, women that serve, they see horrible things and they bring it home, and how are you to unpack it? So, Jack of that era, those guys, they didn't unpack it. They just hold it up in a concrete wall, compartmentalized it.
It's a tough word to say.
Exactly, just hung on to it.
Now, Dan Fogelman brought in author and Vietnam vet Tim O'Brien. Why was it important to have him there and kind of get in Jack's story right? And what were those conversations like?
I think there was a lot of direct correlation to Tim's experience in Vietnam to Jack's. Yeah. There was a lot of what they were wanting to tell story-wise, the writers, about Jack's story that was brought up from Tim. Our writer's room, crazy talented. We don't have any veterans in there. We have no one who serves. So it's bringing in someone like Tim, who is not only a veteran of Vietnam, but also just an amazing storyteller. He's a storyteller first and foremost. It had a great impact on the direction we took Jack, on specificity. There were a lot of things that, I would sit and I would talk to Tim about his time and relating it to what Jack was going through, and just details. And
what specifically was it?
A lot of it was experience, understanding the weight of being responsible for other people in a war, the emotions that happen that you kind of really have to just clamp down when you're in battle, when you lose someone, when you have to complete a mission and move on, all the way down to where we tucked our boonie cap when we were wearing our helmets. So it was a pleasure. It was really a great honor having him around and just having the perspective, the lens of what he experienced when he was in Vietnam, but also he's a storyteller first and foremost. So he was just part of our group. Now,
you filmed in Vietnam, which must have been incredible. What were some of your favorite memories from filming there?
Mostly it was the people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty amazed that that country, having been through such a horrible war, is still so positive and loving and inviting, and that was the one thing my dad used to tell me about when he was in Vietnam in his early 20s was He couldn't understand how such a horrible war could be happening to such a beautiful people, and to still be over there and see that people are walking around holding hands, positive when they went through such a horrible conflict. It was really striking to see.
Now, looking back to when you first joined This Is Us, when did you personally know that it would be this hit that it is today?
Reading that first script, I knew that it was special, and then when I saw it cut together, with score, with final edit, and a beautiful picture, it was like, oh, this is a really beautiful show. And then beyond that, as the scripts kept coming in and we were looking at everything, it's like, wow, these scripts just get better and better and better. And being someone who watches TV, you just go, oh, well, this is good. This makes sense that people are going to watch it. And so then when the audience grew and it kind of turned into this, big snowball phenomenon, kind of like rolling down the hills, like, wow, it wasn't surprising because the stories were so great and the execution was really, really wonderful.
People have such an attachment to the show and to Jack.
Uh-huh.
What have been some of the reactions that have stuck out to you about people's reactions to Jack and the show?
For me, mostly it's the inspiration they get from him. Jack, for all his greatness, he also he's a normal guy. He's not a Marvel comic character. He's not saving the world. He's looking out for his family.
Saving his family.
Yeah. That, to me, I think is something that we as citizens of the world kind of need right now. Yeah. We just need good guys. We need good guys to look up to. We kind of need like attainable goals. Yeah. And I think someone that is kind like Jack is, that is strong like Jack is, that is supportive and compassionate like Jack is, any of the shortcomings he has, his battling with alcoholism, sometimes maybe, his viewpoint like on relationships, it's like, well, he's a kind man, he's a good man. Yeah. So I think I'm always encouraged when I see people that
human.
Are. Yeah, he's very human, but I'm always encouraged when I see people saying like, I want to be a dad like Jack. I want to be a husband like Jack. I want to be a friend like Jack. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
You said you got emotional also while watching?
Sometimes, yeah.
This past season, were there any specific scenes that you got more emotional for?
Man, usually anything having to do with the kids. Yeah. It's funny because when I watch the show, I watch it as an audience, but I also kind of watch it as Jack. So when I see the adult kids going through things, I'm like, oh man, but Kate, if you could Kevin, Randall, if you could, so those are the things that kind of like grab at me when Kevin's going through his struggles, when Kate is going through her struggles, when Randall's going through his, it's just like, that stuff just kind of breaks my heart.
One of the things that stuck out to me was the boxing kind of motif that he explored with Randall.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what stood out to you about that episode specifically, and kind of this motif of Jack being this fighter?
It's funny. I feel like Jack got into boxing because he was trying to stamp down another need, which was alcohol for him. And it kind of turned into something different. What I love about Jack, he's strong in the right way. Yeah. He's not overbearing, but he kind of feels like this rock in an ocean that's just kind of like sticking out and just like slowly, is changing shape, being impacted by the ocean around him, but then he's still a rock. He's still just like this solid piece of immovable object that is just sitting there for all of time.
Jack the Rock,
or 54 years of his life.
You yourself boxed. Did that influence that part of the story at all, or no?
No, I don't think that informed one or the other. I think it was helpful that I boxed. They were like, "Hey, do you need a boxing trainer?" I was like, "I think I'm pretty good."
Well said.
Yeah, I'm like, "I think I'm okay. Said very humbly because there are many better fighters than me.
What are your thoughts on Rebecca and Miguel ending up together? And what do you think Jack would think about that?
I mean, I think Jack and Miguel kind of had the conversation. Yeah. I know close friends of mine, they always say to me like, "Hey, if anything happens to me, like make sure my family's okay." Yeah. I think it's an honorable thing. It's a noble thing, and also, death is the ultimate finality. Yeah. And when someone dies, I think those that are left behind need to find love and commonality. Yeah. And I think it's great that Rebecca and Miguel found each other in a way of companionship and romance and any of that.
At the end of season 3, we see Nicky by Rebecca's side, and you talked about kind of having trouble exploring the relationship between Jack and Nicky. Can you talk about that?
I didn't have trouble exploring it, but I mean, it's all out of order because we were 3 seasons in filming stuff that had impacted the Jack that we'd already shot, but it was all brand new. So for me, I was always I was a little upset that Jack never got to repair things with his brother. But at the same time, Jack is a man of a certain era that I think held on to, like we were saying, compartmentalized those emotions, and he just probably couldn't deal with it. Didn't want to, also because he didn't want it to disrupt what his life was with Rebecca and the kids. I'm happy to see that Kevin reached out and found Nicky, and it seems like it paid off, and because that last image we saw with Randall walking into the room with her, Rebecca, and Nicky sitting at the bed, Nicky looked pretty good. Yeah. So his life turned around. With
the show ending with season 6, what do you think you'll miss most about the show and about playing Jack? We have some time, but...
Nah, for me, it's the crew. The crew that is there every day, they're the ones that I think are the real flesh of the show. They're the ones holding it all together. They're the ones that are, day in and day out, they're the living, breathing entity, the family of what we do. Like, it would be a completely different show if we had a completely different crew. So for me, it's always the people.
Do you see it being a satisfying ending for viewers?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Sad truth or reality is, everything ends. Everything ends. But I believe that when there is a moment to send something off the right way, it's almost like into old age, you can honor the story and the characters and all of that. So knowing what I know already, I'm looking forward to what the audience gets to experience with the closing of the show, which is still like 3 seasons later.
Jumping
it's so far away.
Next up for you is The Art of Racing in the Rain, which everyone's really excited about. Can you kind of talk about that and what viewers can expect?
So Art of Racing in the Rain, it's based on a book written by Garth Stein. It's about this race car driver who has this dog. And the film takes place over the course of the dog's life from puppy until he's old. Yeah. And the film is narrated by the dog as he watches his owner going through life. Meeting a woman, falling in love, having a family, auto racing, and then also the hard times that really befall him. Yeah, it was a great experience, good film. Amanda Seyfried plays my wife, and a lot of great other actors in the film, and Kevin Costner voices the dog, and yeah, it's just it feels like one of those films. Like if you like This Is Us, you'll really like the Art of Racing in the Rain. It's a very human story.
For you as an actor and producer, what other stories are you looking to tell? What are you excited most about kind of exploring ahead?
Man, I think just telling stories, having the opportunity to tell stories. It's less subject matter for me. It's more, again, people that I work with. I've got friends that are talented writers or friends that are talented directors, actors, whatever, and just kind of piling them together and saying, hey, let's go tell the story of this, or let's go tell the story of that. But subject matter, I look forward to all of it.
You joked with us recently about kind of showing up to a Batman and Robin casting call.
Oh yeah.
Would you ever want to play Batman? Is it something you were a big Batman fan?
Who wouldn't want to play Batman? I think I'm too old now.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I think I'm too old now.
I think you can do it.
I think I can do it.
Yeah.
I think other people think I'm too old now. It's okay.
Thank you so much for being here.
You got
Seriously,
it,
so great.
Yeah, definitely, brother. You got it, man.